Hello and welcome to today's video. What we're going to be talking about is the recent decision to ban transgender athletes from women's swimming competitions. Now, at first glance, this seems like a small victory, right? Like it seems like, cool, we're going to have some sanity again. Women's sports are going to be respected as for women. If you look closer though, you will notice that this decision is actually that you must have completed, or you cannot, I suppose, the language is more exclusive. It's you cannot have gone through male puberty. So they're kind of marking that arbitrary designation as about 12 years old. So they're saying that if you have not fully transitioned before 12, then you are going to have to compete in this new category, which is the open category. I played Ultimate Frisbee in college and we played in the open division. That just meant it was men open to women, and then there was a women's division, not open to men. So no one saw that as unfair either, because you could have a team entirely of men if that's what you wanted to do. This was a club thing. It was an elective thing. If you leave people up to their own devices, they'll sort it out. It's when you start to try to get bureaucratic about it, you'll realize the problem. And I think that is what we're seeing here, is now they're going to legislate it. And what I think is the biggest issue in all of this, and the most nefarious part, is that this will encourage those grooming parents to transition their child earlier in order to validate their transition. And I say validate their transition in the sense that a lot of transgender people believe that the ability to pass, which is the ability to look like the sex they're trying to look like, they believe that is like the end all be all. That will be your ultimate saving grace in life. If you're a trans woman, a man, who can pass as a woman, you are probably going to have an easier time invading women's spaces and pretending to be a woman, and therefore your mission will be easier. So good for you, I guess. But you're gonna be up against me. And I'm saying, I think that is going to lead a lot more kids down a path earlier than they would have gone. Kids who maybe could have escaped this because they would have aged out, they would have gotten other interests, different hobbies and stuff. They're now going to have been committed to this earlier and earlier. So we're going to be seeing more people pushing to get their kids transitioned by 10 or 11 years old, so that way they go through the proper puberty. They're trying to say like, oh, my boy is going through female puberty, and it's like, he doesn't have a cycle. He doesn't have a uterine lining to shed because he doesn't have a uterus. He doesn't have fallopian tubes. He doesn't have ovaries. Like, I'm gay and I know this stuff. Like, come on now, pay a little bit of attention. Or, in fairness, maybe some of you have not been taught this, or you have been taught bad information. And I see it so common online that I could genuinely see that being the thing, that not everybody here is in bad faith. A lot of these people might genuinely be misled, and I truly believe that's the case for most of the children. I know what it was like to be 17, watching one episode of Queer as Folk on my PSP that I had downloaded, made sure to scrub all the internet and stuff. I had to convert it, had to put it on my little PSP and then watch it in privacy at night right before bed to try to learn about gay culture and stuff. And so it was very like, your frames of reference will build your worldview. So I could see all these people who are really like, Black trans women gave you rights. Like, if you really were taught that, and you really think people like me are out here being like, no, they didn't. Like, I can see why they would be resentful if they think that I'm out here denying history. But here's the thing, I've been on this planet longer than a lot of you. So I had time to learn more, I had time to listen more, and I actually came from a time where you did have to sit and listen a lot more. And I'm just saying, like, once you age up and you kind of see, oh, this is the people I was looking up to, now that I've gotten to their age, who am I? How do I feel? I just feel like so many of these kids are not going to be who they think they are at 10 years old. I know I'm not, I know most people I know are nowhere near that. So I really do think that this decision, on first glance, awesome. It seems like cool, women's sports are going to be respected. So far, this is just in swimming. It does look like it's going to kind of cross over into a lot of other sports. I think that This is like what happens in the legal world. They refer to this as setting a precedent. So that means like now if they ever have to try to make a tough decision in the future, they'll look back and say like, okay, what's the precedent? What did we do in the past for consistency's sake to interpret the law, and how should we do this? And that is how our judicial system is supposed to work. And so I do think that as much as it can sometimes seem like a slippery slope argument, and debate class taught me that that is a logical fallacy, though it is one that seems to play itself out fairly often. So how much of a fallacy is it? Depends on the context. I will say though that I really do worry about these kids, because there's already such an emphasis on that passing, to the point where we have adults that are getting facial feminization surgery. You got women pumping themselves full of testosterone so they can just be hairy, because they think that, oh, people will associate hairiness with manliness. I will get clocked as a man. Only a man could possibly produce chest hair. People are gonna know I'm a man. But we have all the other senses to tell us. It's like you have female bone structure, you carry yourself like a woman, you have a female pelvic tilt. Like there's so much more evidence than you think. So correcting one little thing is not going to prevent everybody else from clocking you. Sorry to say that, but those of us who understand anything about anatomy and what we're looking at can kind of diagnose the problem there. So you passing really feels more like an act of deception. Like if I were to, this is a shirt. It just is like a button-up shirt, right? If this was a dress, you didn't see the rest of it, and I stood up and I was like, I was a woman the whole time. Like, would you have felt a little bit like the frame of reference of where I was coming from was like a gotcha? Like I was trying to distort your idea of me to give you my opinion, only to twist it at the end. Like that would have been deceptive and kind of shitty, right? That's how I feel. It's how a lot of people who have an emphasis on honesty and things having meaning, and that meaning being understood, and communication being effective. Meaning, I don't know if you guys ever had this, but we were taught this in school. It's like, this is a communicator, this is a communicator. And if they're talking, sometimes communication breakdown can happen where like your message gets misinterpreted. Maybe they're distracted, maybe they heard you wrong, maybe they had a prejudice against you, and so whatever they heard, they were hearing through their prejudice. Like, those are all possibilities. And so that's just a tangent there. I want to just circle real quick back to my underlying point, which is that I think a lot of this is going to fall back on hurting the kids, because none of these decisions are just made like a, hey, you know what, we should respect women's sports again. You're right, like we were doing bad stuff. It's like there's money behind it. I wish it was just as simple as like, yeah, you're right, like let's respect women's sports. But if there's any money in any other opposing power, it's gonna go there. Like, I don't believe that women's sports are incredibly lucrative, which is why they get paid less. I know there's tons of people who love them, and I think they're great for women to do. So it's not like that they don't have value. They just are not particularly lucrative. People would rather see the force of two men battle it out, and we'd rather see, because we have less empathy for men, we'd rather see a man get his ass handed to him. So like in football when they crash, it's like that. But even as much as powder puff football would be hot, we don't want to see women getting beat up and hurt, especially pretty ones. Like our sexist world, like the way we were archaically raised, or at least those of us who kind of have a gender role, people who are raised with like chivalry and empathy and whatever. It's like, I'm a man, I'm gay, I still hold doors for women, I still treat women differently than men. I don't care that people think that's sexist. It's just, that's the way the world works. It's how most other cultures work. You have to treat women differently than you treat men. I have to assume that certain interactions with men can get physical just at any minute, because that's how men are. When I'm talking to a woman, that's not even a possibility. But the possibility that she might hit me is a possibility, but there's no defending there's none of that, because you have to treat men and women differently. And I don't care that people have a problem with that. So I think it is deceptive, and I think it's really like, it's just a shitty practice to be in, to be lying to people and asking them to treat you differently than you really deserve to be treated. And that's the reality of it. It's an entitled thing. It's entitled to think that you're a man who can go be in women's swimming. It's entitled to think that you can start conversations with what are your pronouns. It's like, excuse me, you insult me with that question and you should know that. And that's very rude for someone who seems to give a shit about this type of stuff. So politely, buzz off. I could go on and on. I'll leave it at this. I will just say, hopefully there will be a return to sanity. I would really like women's sports to be protected. It doesn't matter to me, but it means a lot to them. And I think that creates better women for me to be around. So as selfish as it all comes back in the end, I think everybody wins. So thanks for listening. I don't enjoy just sitting by myself and talking at a camera. It makes me feel super weird. I say all this stuff hopefully so that people can hear it. If you agree with me, let me know. If you disagree with me, let me know. Like, if it's the same boring talking points, I'm not exactly going to respond to your stupid thing. Like, do you know non-binary people exist? I'll be like, I don't, because they don't.